All right, we begin in the United States, where all 100 members of the Senate have been briefed by top U.S. officials on the country's strategy against the DPRK. And the high-profile briefing at the White House came amidst escalating tensions on the Korean Peninsula. While administration officials often travel to the capital to brief lawmakers on national security issues, it's rare for the entire Senate to visit the White House. Our correspondent Jessica Stone gives more details on the briefing.
A senior administration official who briefed reporters on Wednesday afternoon said that the members of Congress who are getting these DPRK briefings from the White House are getting a list of options, which include putting the DPRK on a state sponsor of terrorism list. In the meantime, the overall strategy seems to be, according to this official, that they are using additional U.S. and allied military pressure on Pyongyang to buy them more time to implement economic pressures with the help of Beijing. And that includes a lot of the sanctions that are being talked about at the United Nations, as well as cutting off energy supplies to Pyongyang. Now, that strategy is something that the lawmakers in this country and, frankly, diplomats around the world have been crying out to hear more details on, and that so far this White House has been pretty circumspect on the details. Many of the lawmakers coming to these briefings have had a lot of confusion and a lot of questions about the nature of the strategy that is unfolding from this White House. They do, of course, know about the role that China is playing, given the comments from President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China out of Mar-a-Lago and since, and the cooperation of phone calls that have taken place, but they still don't know the nature of that cooperation, nor how much pressure Beijing can truly bring to bear on Pyongyang. But what they do know and what they keep hearing is a greater amount of concern from analysts and military officials alike that Pyongyang is closer than ever to getting a nuclear weapon. Take a listen.
With every test, Kim Jong-un moves closer to his stated goal of a preemptive nuclear strike capability against American cities, and he's not afraid to fail in public. Defending our homeland is my top priority, so I must assume that the Kim Jong-un's nuclear claims are true.
Now, the goal here for this White House is to brief all members of Congress about the concerns that they have about the DPRK, and in the event that the U.S. president decides to launch any type of military action which requires congressional authorization, he is trying to build a coalition, not just of members of Congress, but also at the United Nations for additional pressure to be brought to bear on Pyongyang. Jessica Stone, CGTN, Washington.
Meanwhile, the U.S., South Korea and Japan have held multiple military drills amid the rising tension with the DPRK. CGTN's Yang Zhao tells us more about these.
One pointed message after another from the U.S. and its two allies to Pyongyang. On Wednesday, the South Korean and U.S. militaries held a combined firing drill in Pocheon, about 60 kilometers northeast of Seoul. Pocheon is located near the demilitarized zone that separates the two Koreas. Dozens of tanks, rocket launchers, and fighter jets were seen during the live fire exercises. This was the third one this month, and it came only a day after the DPRK held one of its own. Meanwhile, South Korea also dispatched a frigate and submarine to join maritime training exercise in waters south of the Korean Peninsula. It will also acquire two advanced early warning radars called Green Pine to detect ballistic missiles from the north later this year. Heading for the Korean Peninsula, the U.S. aircraft carrier strike group Carl Vinson on Thursday was joined by Japan's Air Self-Defense Forces for a joint exercise in waters south of Japan. It follows two-day exercises with two Japanese destroyers as the Vinson passed through the Philippine Sea. The U.S. Navy says the two exercises demonstrate the ability of the U.S. and Japan to respond quickly to threats in the region. Yang Zhao, CGTN.
And the DPRK has condemned the U.S. for proposing new sanctions. A foreign ministry spokesman said the U.S. policy is a little short of lighting the fuse of a total war. The spokesperson also blamed U.S.-South Korea joint military drills for pushing the whole peninsula on the brink of war.
Once war breaks out on the Korean Peninsula, no matter who started, the U.S. will have to be blamed. The U.S. is not satisfied with current hostile policies against us. They deployed a number of strategic weapons to the peninsula.
And on Tuesday, the DPRK held its largest ever firing drill, which was overseen by leader Kim Jong-un. The drill was held to mark the 85th anniversary of the military It included torpedo attacks by submarines, aircraft dropping bombs, and artillery fire. After the drill, troops pledged their loyalty to Kim Jong-un. And for more on the situation on the peninsula, we are joined by Professor Xiongli Li, Director of the Department of International Politics at the University of International Business and Economics. Welcome to Global Watch, Professor Xiong. Well, even until yesterday, the Korean Peninsula is under the brink of war. And a slightest provocation from each side could send the whole peninsula into war at any time. Now, after briefing the 100 senators at the White House says that they're going to apply more diplomatic ways to solve this matter. What is going on here? What's happening to make this change of attitude?
As to the DPRK nuclear issue, the ultimate goal of the United States is not a war or military conflict with DPRK, but denuclearization of DPRK. That means if the ultimate goal of denuclearization of DPRK can be achieved, of course, the diplomatic means may be much less costly than a military operation, such as a military strike or military deterrence. That means if diplomatic means can help the United States to achieve the goals of denuclearization of DPRK, the diplomatic means may be best choice.
So you mean the war has not been on the table from the very start, actually?
In fact, I don't think so. War may be still on the table of Mr. Trump, but maybe the last choice, not the best choice. That means if there's no other choice, such as diplomatic means or even deterrence, a military strike may be launched.
Well, talking about the sanctions, especially economic sanctions on DPRK, DPRK has already under very strict economic sanctions. What more can the outside or can the international community do?
As there have been rather tough sanctions on DPRK, the next step may be more joint efforts among all the parties concerned. That means all cooperation, all coordination among China, US, South Korea, even Japan. If the international community can have some joint efforts to do more, the situation may be better and safer.
Will US put DPRK back on the blacklist of countries sponsoring terrorism?
That may depend on whether DPRK will go on with its nuclear program.
What will happen if the DPRK continues its nuclear program whatsoever?
If DPRK insists its nuclear program, I think not only put back to the list of terrorist country, but also a military strike may be on the table. That may be very dangerous for the peace. So nowadays, the crucial point may be DPRK should abandon its nuclear program as quickly as possible. That may be safest for all the countries in the region.
Thank you very much, Professor Xiongli Li, Director of the Department of International Politics at the University of International Business and Economics. Thank you very much indeed. Now, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has urged an end to US-South Korean joint military maneuvers as well as a stop to the DPRK's nuclear program in the bid to calm tensions on the Korean Peninsula. Wang said Pyongyang's continued nuclear activities were a clear violation of UN resolutions, but stressed that persisting with military drills around the peninsula is not in the spirit of the resolutions either. Our correspondent Guy Henderson has the details.
As the threat of war looms, China still sees a path back from the brink.
The most pressing issue right now is to take up negotiations again.
At a meeting in Berlin, Foreign Minister Wang Yi said Beijing would do all it could.
Of course, China is against the DPRK developing nuclear weapons, and we too think that it's not in the DPRK's interest. But the DPRK always claims that the development of nuclear weapons is in response to an American military threat.
A threat that appears unpopular on both sides of Korea's demilitarized zone. South Koreans protested the US THAAD missile defense system, expected to be operational in days. It's another reason why China sees the Korean conflict as one mainly between Pyongyang and Washington. Guy Henderson, CGTN, Berlin.
Well, Wang Yi's comments on the DPRK were made at the joint news conference with his German counterpart Sigmar Gabriel, following talks on security and foreign relations. The Chinese foreign minister's next destination will be New York, where he will meet with UN ambassadors on issues related to the Korean Peninsula.